Okay, let's get straight into it. Lesson 3, drawing your guidelines. Now, you want to use some type of metallic permanent marker. This one is from Target and off-brand. You have your Sharpie, or you can use a white China marker. And we need something that's going to pop. That's why I say the metallic markers. Obviously, the white is going to pop on the black. I really do not prefer to use the Sharpie brand. It's expensive. The smell, to me, it runs out quicker. However, it gets the job done. It really does not matter. It's a preference. So don't think because you're getting an off brand, it isn't as good as the Sharpie brand. For wig making, I like something that's going to easily wash off. The Sharpie, it washes off. It shampoos off easily. But these shampoo off very easily, especially this marker here. So I am just going to draw a line so that you can see it really doesn't matter. You can see that. You can see the Sharpie. And of course, the white China marker. So all 3 of these are going to pop. So for the sake of the video, I am going to use this white China marker. When you are drawing your guidelines, you want to make sure that you have enough space in between each guideline. Now, to do that, you can very much eye it, but a very beginner-friendly way is to just use your tape measure. And when you are using your tape measure, you want to start from the 0. And what I like to do is I would pin it using a T-pen. However, I pin mine this way. Your first guideline, it can go right here if that's what you prefer. So now you don't see a lot of people drawing guidelines right here because they are sewing their tag on. And what I mean by a tag, when you're branding your wigs, you can have a wig tag. So I'm going to sew it here. So I'm not going to draw a guideline because I'm not going to put my track on that guideline. The reasons we are drawing guidelines on the wig cap is to let us know where to sew our track. And because I am not sewing here, but I am going to sew right above that line, I am going to put my T-pen right here. And if you would like, you can put another T-pen right here. This isn't right or wrong, as long as you're having it marked off. So don't get caught up too much of, oh, it's pinned here. Why isn't it pinned here? As long as the distance from here to the next line is 1 inch apart, that's a good enough guide for beginners. When I draw guidelines making wigs, I rarely ever use this tape measure. I do it by eye. But I have been making wigs forever, so let's go ahead and mark this off. I mark here at the 1. And I just do marks. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And as you can see with this cap, the 10 is right here at the closure. So I'm not going to mark that off because I know a track must go around the closure regardless. So this is where that track will be. You don't have to mark this last one off. It's totally up to you. And these little marks are our guide to how we are going to draw our guideline. So I'm going to show you a beginner-friendly way again. There are many different ways to draw your guidelines to get it right. There are a few tips that I am going to go over to make sure that you are drawing your guidelines where it's going to actually capture your measurements the way you intend for it to capture it. And that's exactly what guidelines are. That's why we are drawing it. It's capturing the measurements, giving us that placement of where we need to sew our tracks to have a good custom fit wig. So the first thing I do is draw my guideline right here. You can turn the wig block. It's much smoother when you're using a marker. Or you can keep it still and use a steady hand and do strokes across. If you don't want to do strokes, you can just draw a straight line without stroking it. With this China marker, it's a little easier to do little strokes because it doesn't glide as easily as a marker. And let me show you that. So with your marker, if you are turning it, you're turning the head and you are just letting it glide. So you see how easy it was for this line to just glide? Now, I start from the middle and go out sometimes, but there's no right or wrong. The way we visually see lines and see the way things are even, it depends on your eye. It depends on your skill set. You can very much come from here and then draw the line this way to connect to the middle. So you have to do what works for you. For me, it isn't as easy. Well, it's easy just because I have been doing it, but I'm comfortable. I prefer to have this wig block in my lap when I am drawing the guidelines. And I'm just going to go over this to ensure that it is popping for the video. Here's my next guideline. And you want to try to draw as straight as possible, especially in this area right here at the nape and below that occipital bone. If I was going up, this line would be right here. So you don't want to draw in an upward direction. You want to come as straight as cross as possible. And again, if I was coming down, this line would be going here. Now, as you're drawing your guidelines, don't worry about, oh, it's too close. It looks off. If it's too close, there are ways to correct that. So, for example, I really don't like that this line is right here. It's a little bit too far up for me. So what I would do is I am going to fix it. So it takes practice. Fix it. And when you do fix it, you need to cross this line out, especially if you are a beginner, so you know not to sew on this line. You are going to sew on this line. So be easy on yourself when you are new to making wigs or you still haven't really mastered it. So now I'm going to just keep drawing these guidelines. And sometimes what I like to do, I would just come in the middle and draw each one in the middle. The steadier your hand, the neater. You see how I'm just drawing it and I'm not doing the strokes, but do what works for you. Now, when you're new to wig making, I want you to look at this area right here. We have to get all of these lines to come around and fit without touching each other. So after you do maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, like you see here, you may say, let me take this. This is the curve of the head. We are going with the curve of the head. I'm going to take this and I am going to rotate, keep a steady hand and draw my guideline. Now I can visually see how much space I have here to make sure all 3 of these lines fit evenly right here. The next one. I might decide to come here now. See, so you don't have to go all the way from the bottom up. Do what works for you to get your guidelines to look proportionate here. And now I can see in the middle, I need to go straight in the middle of this gap to have equal sides. And look at how easy that is. What you do on one side, you want to come around and do on the other side. Another thing I want you to look at this line as it relates to this closure, right? So we have, I usually use whatever's in my hand. I'm not picking up the tape measure to do this. So from here to here, it's about that amount of space. I turn my wig block around And I know I need to be somewhere about right here to just keep it even. So as I draw this line, guideline, and if you're following it, look. I know that everything is aligning the way it should. Come do this one. Come here. And again, this guideline. Your guidelines are going to look different. You may have different amount of guidelines depending on what size your wig block is. Now, what we want to do is continue to draw the guidelines. I have 3 more to go. When you are drawing your guidelines, what I don't want you to do is square it off. I kept going around. By squaring it off, I mean, let's say if I was drawing this guideline here, and then you come here, and then you draw this way, right? When you create that angle right here, and you keep doing that to your guidelines, what's going to happen is you're going to have a gap here. And then you're going to find yourself having to put 1, 2, 3 small lines going across just to fill up this. So going on the curve and going with around the shape of the head, with the curvature of the head, help keeps these guidelines spaced apart the way you need it for wig making. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to hold it like this so that you can see from this part, is continue to draw my guideline. And again, this is curving. It's curving right here. See how I curved that? My next one is going to curve into this guideline as well. Put this back here. Finish drawing these guidelines. My next one. And my last guideline is just going to go around the closure. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So notice this guideline is ending right here. So I want to make sure on the other side, this guideline ends at the tip of that closure. Come here, following the same technique. And come in here. And there you have your guidelines. So the last guideline, when I'm saying it's going to go around the closure, it's going to be right underneath here, right? Right underneath that closure. So that's why I say you don't have to draw the guideline. But if you need to draw it, then feel free to draw it. And that's all you need to do to draw guidelines. I want you to understand track placement. This is a track. This is your weft. Weft, track is the same thing. So we draw these guidelines so that when we're sewing on the sewing machine, we know I need to sew here. So I am going to sew it here. Where do you actually going to start? I start from this way. And after I get done sewing it, the way I teach you in the next lesson, you cut it and then you're going to sew again. So as you can see, this remaining track can only take up 2 guidelines from the nape area. This isn't enough to go around. So I'm showing you this, which we'll get into in the next lesson. But I really want to show you so that you can know sometimes you may need less guidelines. Sometimes you may need 1 more guideline, depending on how you style your wigs. But this is a general guide. If you use this, you can't go wrong. I like to use this blueprint and then decide if I need to single my tracks on, or double my tracks on, or triple my tracks on. And by that, this is a single track. If we were to double this, and the video is linked below to show you how to double, it will look like this on here, right? And a triple track, if you were to triple this, it will look like this once you sew it on. Now, before you start, you have different bundles of hair. This one is a raw Indian bundle. Raw Indian hair. It's thick. If I'm making a blunt cut bob wig, I am only using 2 of these. You see how thick the track is? Now you want to know, when you unravel this, how long is it? And when you see how long it is, that is going to show you how to gauge how many bundles you will need. So let's go into gauging. I'm going to cut this off so that you can see. When I unravel this, you see how beautiful this hair is. And this hair is from number 11 on my raw and virgin hair vendor list. So, majority of the time, when I am making a wig with this hair, I am going to double the track. So if I double the track, this is the fold. This is how long it is. It's very long. If I was to single it, it would be this way. So what I like to do is have my bundle doubled to see how much track am I going to need to complete this wig. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so 6. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It put me right here. You need another bundle to complete your wig. So let's say if this is one bundle, the second bundle would be the exact same amount as this. I know 1, 2, 3. It's stopping right here. So that's 3. I have 2 more tracks, but this is all the hair that I have left, right? So this is only going to take me to this guideline here. So now if you're only using 2 bundles, you're going to run out of hair if this is double. So what I would do is I wouldn't double this track. I will make this my single track. So now it's a longer piece of track that I'm working with because it's singled and not double. And this will finish here, 1 and 2 around. So to make a complete wig with vendor number 11 with their shorter length, so you're doing a bob or a blunt cut, I only need 2 bundles. And it's something else to think about when you're styling. This hair is very full. Do you need 2 complete bundles? I'm a 23.5, so I might need it. But if I was making a wig for someone that was a 20 circumference, I am only going to use maybe 1.5 or a little bit over 1.5 for my short blunt cuts because I do not want it too thick. Now, if you take a look at another vendor, so now let's look at this vendor here, right? I love it. It's also on my vendor list. He pre-wraps my bundles, and I'll give this vendor to you. This is GS hair. I love to use them for my sleek bobs, and I'm just going to unravel this for you. Now, as you can see, as I'm unraveling this hair, this is what I use for my virgin bobs. If you follow Tailored Crown, all of her blunt cuts, her bellas were made with this vendor as well. You can purchase her class to know how to make those wigs in style, and this is the vendor that's used. So again, here it is unraveled, and you want to do the same thing. Let's gauge. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is getting me to about the 5th line, whereas the other bundle got me to the 6th line. So this is going to be shorter. So if you were to single it, this is one bundle. If you were to single this, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to go around 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You don't make a wig with one bundle. You just don't do that. So that's why when you draw these guidelines, it's important to know where you want to double, where you want to single, where do you need to triple. If this was 30-inch hair, trust me, some of my tracks are going to be tripled here because I need the fullness at the end of those bundles. So wherever you want the weight and the density to be. So maybe you want to, for a bob, where you do not want it to be heavy at the end, you can single here, and then you can single, double, 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 and continue to double, single your last track. You can, and I do it often, have a double track around my closure. You can have a double track underneath this closure and it lays flat. You very much can once you learn how to sew. It's not a problem. So we can say that it's about preference of when you single, double, or triple of how you're going to style. But you are a beginner. So you're probably like, Janelle, just give me the way that yield the most consistent results, right? The most consistent results is when you have 3 bundles, you are going to double your entire 3 bundles. It's going to fill the wig up. More than likely, what I like to do is I double my first 2 bundles, and then my 3rd bundle, I gauge the way I just showed you to decide how many. When I'm using 2 bundles, I double my first bundle, and then I single my top bundle. That is a good way, and it yields consistent results. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. I will do my best to answer all questions as it relates to wig making. And that's it. Very simple. Next lesson is sewing our tracks on.